Okay, continuing our conversation about stationing and profiles, there's a couple of things that we want to discuss. First of all, it's good practice to begin your stationing, and this is station 0, 0, 0 plus 0, 0. Don't jam it up on the y-axis. So in other words, there's some type of space here. It doesn't have to be this much, but some type of space between the beginning and your y-axis. So just to talk about it one more time, these are the vertical elevations. They're relative to the site benchmark. 90, 95, 100, 105, 110. These are the horizontal 0, 1 plus 0, 0. Now one thing you notice is there's a different vertical and horizontal scale. And this is to make it readable. If we applied the same scale, the 1-to-1, so the difference between 95 and 90 feet is obviously 5 feet. If we applied it here, the drawing will be really drawn out and be much more difficult to read. So you need to apply different scales to your horizontal and vertical axis. This is the reason why a lot of times we do these by hand, for the simple reason that it's easier to do the conversion between horizontal and vertical scales. If you have a large project, definitely Civil 3D. It will create a lot of this for you. If you're not used to setting it up and doing profiles and stuff, it will be kind of a pain the first time. Now, one thing you have to be careful with in doing this manually is updating your drawing. So if you move something on the plan view up here, you need to make sure that you move it accordingly down here. Okay, so different horizontal scales. We don't usually list the number, so this would be 0 plus 50, but we do include a tick mark for it. Again, 1 plus 50 here, so forth on down the line. So where to begin? Just on the vertical scale, you want to give yourself a little room and start with an even number. We've started, our invert was 90.69, which is here. And so we've chosen a start point on the vertical scale of 90. That gives us a little bit of room. You can start with a an 85 or so forth, but don't start anywhere in between. Don't start, for instance, here. Don't start with 88. That becomes difficult. You want to maintain this vertical scale in increments of 5. A few other things of note. Notice that we have a grid pattern. We have both vertical and horizontal lines in here to indicate the appropriate elevation or distance. We can draw those with lines, construction lines. You can use an array. Either way is appropriate. The labels here are typically just text. That's what we're going to work on in class, is more or less doing this, and not necessarily populate it with an array. If you feel like you want to, you can by all means do that. Also, we talked about in the previous video, existing grade. This is the top of the ground. We use a dash line, which indicates that that's the area. A couple other notes. Anytime you're crossing another utility, you will show that on your profile. Again, a profile is nothing more than a section cut. In this case, this 24-inch line would be coming out more or less from the page. We draw ellipses in here for those particular items because it's not meant to be an exact representation. It's just a crossing of the two pipes. We do put them in the right spot. So if the invert of this particular 24-inch effluent pipe is somewhere around 95.5 or so, and the way that I can determine this is go to the y-axis, and it also crosses at about station. So I'm gonna list these here. So the invert elevation of this 24-inch pipe is invert elevation is we're going to call it 95.5. It may be just a tad over, but it's close enough. And then here the station or the crossing is at station 0 plus. So it's about a little bit more than halfway between station 0 plus 50 and station 1 plus 00. We're going to call it, let's call it station 0 plus 82. Now these are scaled, so we could measure that, and by all means that would be the appropriate way to do it, but for the intent of this video, we'll just work with it that way. That marks the top of the pipe and that marks the bottom of the pipe. You want to be representative of your whatever you're trying to show. In this case, we're showing 16-inch, so the scale should be appropriate for the vertical axis. In other words, it should be representative of what you have here. Manholes. This is way ahead in your career, and you're not really familiar with what a manhole looks like. But trust me, draw the cone on the top of it, because the cover that you see in the pavement, that's just the access way. It's larger underneath the ground, and it kind of opens up in order to provide access. So draw it like this. That's the appropriate way to do it. It's a cone. It's not straight up and down. On the tail end, we stop it. Now this is should be here. We don't have the 0 shown, but it should have been shown, and that is kind of a mistake on our part. Also, notice how the major and the minor ticks are listed. This is a major tick. This is a minor tick. So we can correspond those according to whether they're increments of 5 or increments of 1. We want to always list our scale We've done that here. We've said 1 inch is equal to 20 feet. 1 inch is equal to 5 feet vertical, and we've even graphically put an inch in here so we can measure and make sure that it was printed at the correct size. In this particular case, we discussed in the previous video that it's not a linear job. So we have, although we're measuring pipe length for our stations, it's not all in one straight line. The way we account for that is with this particular line here. This line comes over and then goes down to start station 0 plus 0, 0. So we've had to expand our profile since this is not a linear job. In other words, not all the manholes are in a single straight line. We've had to do this in order to account for all the pipe footage between point A and point B. Notice that this line comes down here and matches up here. Again, all of these are scaled. This one matches up here, etc. It's also a good idea, don't leave the actual station numbers for the manholes to guess. You should be listing them. What is the station number? 0 plus 76, new manhole. Here's one plus station 1 plus 23, new manhole. So you want to make sure that you list those as well. That is pretty much the extent of pipeline work with stations and profiles in utility work. It's very similar, and I'll dig up a couple of examples for roadway work. Other items that you may use stationing for is, I don't know, particularly an example of that might be pathways inside of a building. Obviously, runways would be an issue. Many linear jobs would use those, and stationing, is a very good way to account for that.